Hello, everybody. Welcome to our webinar today. My name is Jim Patterson with Microsoft, and I'm pleased to introduce our exciting topic of just-in-time resource planning for strategy realization. We're also excited to have this as a partnership today between Accelare and Microsoft to combine just-in-time resource planning with really robust strategic planning to bring these capabilities and value to organizations. Today we have Jose Levy, a director here at Microsoft, as well as Amber Roman, who is a managing director for Accelare, and they're going to present to you the topics today and demonstrate the value that this can bring to organizations in the marketplace. With that, I will turn it over to Jose. Take it away, and hope you all enjoy.
Thanks, everyone, and thanks, Jim, for the introduction. Really excited today with this webinar. We're working together with Accelare on the topic of just-in-time resource planning and strategy realization. Just a couple of housekeeping points as introduction. Going to be running probably through 40-45 minutes. We have a couple of polls that we'll be showing. As Jim stated, I'm Jose Levy, Director within Microsoft, and I have with me Amber Roman from Accelare, Managing Consultant, and we'll be walking you through the agenda. Just in terms of the organizations that are presenting today, so Accelare, they are the creators of Workfit, and they have been helping clients fix strategy to execution processes to become fit enterprises. That's their theme. Through the Workfit tool, organizations visualize strategy and their operating model and then connect them to planning processes. From the Microsoft standpoint, for those folks that know us, we are one of the largest Microsoft partners in the market. We are a business transformation partner for large organizations, providing advisory solutions and operations, a global organization, and very proud of our Partner of the Year award from Microsoft this year in project and portfolio management. So we'll get right into our agenda, and really we're going to be giving you an overview of strategy to execution delivery, and we're going to highlight our Workfit and OnePlan solutions. In combination, they are a very unique offering that provides an enterprise platform for you to define your strategy in a very detailed and comprehensive fashion, and at the same time tie it to delivery in the context of today's webinar in terms of resource capacity planning, which we think is really where a lot of our challenges are for organizations. So we're going to talk about process and people, but the focus will be, and we'll show a demonstration of Workfit and OnePlan and how they tie together. So what do these two solutions actually do? So Workfit and OnePlan, in this context of capacity management and strategy realization, they're connected and aligned. We have an integration between the two tools that allows Workfit, which is again for strategic planning and project ideation, to be connected to OnePlan, where you're going to manage the enterprise portfolio of projects, and you're going to manage the enterprise resource pool and see how they are assigned and allocated to both strategy portfolios and operational portfolios. You can see the capabilities that are provided from each tool in terms of the focus of the feature set. But suffice to say that we're planning strategy, and we are then incorporating it into an enterprise portfolio where we're going to have to define resource allocation for all of the projects within the organization. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Amber, who's going to walk us through some of the main concepts with our solution.
Thank you, Jose, and bear with me as I take over for sharing my screen. And thank you, everyone. Nice to hear everyone's voice today. Hopefully at one point I'll meet all of you. But I laugh about that because part of what we share today will help introduce some concepts for you. And with that context too, we want to start with really about what problem are we talking about today and frame that for you a bit. The context of what we see right now is, as we see, and with most organizations I know I work with, is there's too much work and not enough people. But we also need to frame it around the fact that we actually need to look at it from operational work and strategic work. And I think oftentimes we see that there's new capabilities right now in the strategy and planning space, but not enough focus on resource capacity, like Jose mentioned earlier, and what's needed to execute on those strategic initiatives. There's a need to really close this resource capacity planning gap, and it's not going to go away. We actually really see that digital transformations are actually changing that dynamic and amplifying this issue. So when you think about it, though, right in the middle there, we talk about decision making. Resource planning is all about decision making. And in the end, there's costs that come with that. And so Gartner, we're citing Gartner here a little bit, but unsound decision making, meaning you don't have a full view of what your resource capacity is as a component of that, costs organizations an average of $5 billion revenue a year, so 32 million a year EBITDA. That's huge. And so we see that the gap that we can fill with Workfit and with OnePlan helps resolve some of these unsound decision-making processes. So we want to actually jump forward though too, because my computer would work. Sorry about that, technical difficulties, operator error. So why do we actually have these gaps, and what do they manifest as? Think of them like pain points. So think of your organization, organizations you worked for in the past. You might see it that operational resources, not project-based, they're often not allocated or accurately looked at as to process-based work, which conflicts with project-based work often. We also might see that project resources are assigned at an allocation, but can't deliver because either they're what I call overcapacity, overscheduled, there's just too many projects. Also then too, we see that EPMOs or SROs, you might hear, strategy realization offices are coming about. They don't necessarily consider true resource requirements both during and for projecting needs when they look at it from a strategic planning lens. And this creates issues downstream. We also see delays caused within, I would say, communication structures or the ways that organizations are hierarchy and org charts and the way that they communicate, so that you actually can't understand constraints and dependencies between initiatives and resources that will then impact your strategy realization. We also see too that a lot of stuff around what I would call processes around strategic planning, that there's not tools or process that's robust enough to help rebalance strategic initiatives on a consistent basis. We also would throw in a little bit on the side about digital business models. I mentioned digital transformations earlier, a lot of buzzwords, but really these just, I would say, create new challenges in resource capacity management. And a lot of organizations aren't designed around capabilities, processes, or products to adjust to this quickly. So these are kind of the things to look for and know if you're suffering through some of these pain points. Now at this point, I know I want to drive out a quick poll and ask all of you to take a moment to answer key questions. So what are your resource management pain points? Thinking back to what we just actually shared with you too, let me just launch my poll really quickly for all of you. And fundamentally, I'll give you a few minutes and we can see what your responses are. All right, so I've launched the poll. I'll give you all a few minutes to answer. Really curious what your thoughts are as you take the poll. And fundamentally, think of it also too about your complexity of what you've seen in the past even, and your current organization. I'll give you guys a little bit longer. All right, give you guys about 5-10 10 more seconds and we'll close out the poll and I'll share with you the results. All right, let me close this out. So it looks like we've got quite a bit of responses here. About close to 70% of you see that resources are not allocated to project work appropriately. The next one was projects getting started and pushed back due to the lack of capacity. That's a key one. And then the other major one too was no process or immature processes to confirm business outcomes throughout. So this actually aligns to a bit of what I've described so far, but also what I see in organizations that actually do structure resource capacity or have processes on that piece, but it doesn't have a connection back to strategic planning or operational planning as well. So it's a key gap. I'm glad to see that you guys also are experiencing that too. All right, let me jump us forward here. So really at this point, there really needs to come down to a simple approach, a common approach. How do you find capacity in your organization to support strategic work? So its best path to tackle this problem is just to think of it as a way to connect project work already in execution back to business outcomes and then find capacity. So you'll need to understand demand, existing capacity within work that's in, say, execution across the organization. And that way you can determine what can be done well within the limits of your current capacity, but also quality business outcomes. So a process like this needs to consider both work that might be completed as well, which you might not think of, and then work in progress, and then align it back to what we would call capabilities and a value stream. This can be done before work kicks off, so it's top down, or it can be done even after work is underway. And that key view actually allows you to see and understand when you're doing top-down planning or real-time, just-in-time resource planning, as we called it, to understand how you're connected back to strategic and business outcomes to make better decisions, more sound decisions in your resource capacity, demand, and needs. But what I want to stress, though, is you might feel like this is kind of, I would say, insurmountable problem or challenge. But you might find that you see places in your organization as today or other places you've worked where you have a reliance on a very manual process. Either think of it like spreadsheets to understand resource capacity or different time tracking systems or different project management systems. And oftentimes on the strategy side, you have PowerPoint, you frankly have Word documents. So how do you connect all that? You'll find that that's a challenge to help do this and have a common approach just because of disparate tools. There's also the component of data and systems and connecting them, you know, tracking back with time tracking systems with project lists to understand resource capacity, then understanding the pipeline of approved projects coming top down, and then looking at that against existing or executing work. And then you consider the fact that those are often different data sources, channels by which you learn about them, how decisions are made about what happens. That all leads to a lot of this lack of a common approach. And so I want to kind of share some of the examples because it'll help get you thinking about ways that OnePlan and Workfit could help you as well. So I'm going to take a step a bit back to about ways to look at managing or looking at this challenge. And so I consider a strategy work initiation lifecycle, as it says here, to have three major components: ideation, evaluation, prioritization, and execution. And what's key about it is it's a bit of a two-part predicament. So why is this still a challenge today? I think really the first part being that the past has driven us to this point where we really focus on the bottom around execution in the project world, and even, frankly, in strategic planning often. The second is that I mentioned earlier digital transformations and strategies really amplifying this problem or this challenge. So we have to consider different ways or the different types of planning an organization utilizes or lack thereof from a top down, which may have nothing to do with project-based work, may initiate project-based work, but that ideation piece up there at the top helps us understand that there's work that will come down and plan in a pipeline, but it all connects back in that middle part for work that's already in execution right in the middle there under filter, resource, capacity, and timing. The reason we need to look at this as a greater need for change is because the evolving technology landscapes, we have to have more insight and transparency very readily into where this connection is of what's being executed to our strategy so we can make real-time, robust, sound decisions about when we'll say, does that project continue? Does the resources continue with that work? And oftentimes, I find that PMOs and leadership even can lose focus quickly on what resource capacity is really about and managing it, simply because there's not a lot of tools to help connect those dots and make sure it's what I would say aligned back to a business outcome. And with that, those structures around it, I mentioned earlier, inadequate communication structures, but also that can create restrictions about who gets to know what and really what true resource capacity is from an operational perspective, just folks doing their day-to-day work, and then project-based work that they have as well. So it really has to fill both gaps. But from a team perspective too, I think that when we look at this view of how you initiate work and decision-making, a process we'll talk through a little later will actually help you see how those decision gates at the end help along the way if you're doing it top-down, but you can't always do it that way. You have to consider a middle starting point, I would say, which is really in that middle part at the portfolio level. And so I've been talking too much. I want to go back to all of you and do a quick poll again. So what I'm going to ask is, how effective right now is your resource management process within your organization today? So give me a moment. I'll launch this poll for us, and we'll give just about a minute to fill it out. Go ahead and start. We're getting some good responses here. It sounds like you guys have experienced a few things I've talked through already. We've got majority voted in, so I'll just give it a few more seconds, and then I'll close this out. All right, we've got about 79% voted in. Sounds like most of you have, or what you feel is a resource capacity planning process that's effective majority of the time, or part of the time, 55% of you. 27 not effective at all, and 18 actually don't have one. So that's interesting. I think it's a learning too for us for how we can show you a few things through our process today. So at this point, I'm actually going to hand over to Jose to bring us back a little bit, and then we'll dive into some more content. Jose? I might have lost you. Are you on mute?
I am here, Amber, and what I want to talk about now is the solution to the challenge. So the first is actually that we have to align project work back to business outcomes and resource capacity, and that is directly related to what you were talking to us about, the strategy process and how projects get created. So we're going to connect projects to portfolios, and really that last part of that statement, capability, process, value stream, and to OKRs, and that is an aspiring level of maturity for organizations. If you really want to impact the organization and make change from a strategy perspective, that's really how it comes about, and we're going to show that a little bit in our demonstration coming up. Doing that will allow you to have a full path to validate that business outcome. So where did that originate? Did we actually achieve what we wanted to from a strategy perspective? The second is more of a operational standpoint in terms of being able to define a repeatable process for resource capacity management. At that point, it's really making sure that there's enough resources for the strategy realization office, the SRO, and the PMO to actually achieve the work. And again, we're connecting, having that connection of portfolios throughout the entire organization. So um, I'm going to walk through that second point in terms of resource capacity planning, just to make sure that everybody knows that not only are we going to define projects from a strategy perspective, but incorporate them into the overall resource management process. And really, the complexity comes because we're dealing with a lot of different variables that you have to master in order to have proper or effective resource capacity management process. So you need to have roles and resources. So you start with FTEs and you go to name resources, and that implies also understanding the capacity of individuals in those roles by organization. Um, if you're seeking to manage cost for projects, there will be resource costs assigned, whether it's an average rate or individual rate by type, by resource type. Forecasting and actuals is another area that's important because we plan really well usually, but we track not as well. In other words, our actuals are deficient, and as a result, we can't actually forecast the resource need moving forward. If you're incorporating strategy and operational projects, you're going to have to go through a prioritization process. There are not endless resources, so you will have to make decisions on which projects and which resources have greater priority. There's a concept of approval and negotiation. If resources are owned by other parts of the organization, and you can't just assume that someone is available or committed to a particular project. And then finally, another um, dimension of maturity is planning and tracking granularity. Are we talking about FTEs or are we talking about specific hours? So all of these have to be taken into account in order for you to have maturity within your resource management process. And most organizations, can probably are in a level two crawl stage. The real ambition is to, throughout the entire organization, and not only in some pockets, to have detailed resource allocation, which is all these blue steps here, where we're going to go from generic or FTEs to named resources. We're going to have all of our resources with skills, so we know the skills we require for every type of project. We have the ability to confirm an assignment and duration on the task. So that means that planning has to be to a certain level of maturity. And then we have the ability to softbook resources or assign them prior to actually committing them. And that's both from a process and a tool standpoint. Uh, if you are doing or combining strategy and operation projects, as we're talking here, you will need to refine your demand requirements because, again, you will have to prioritize. And if you have estimates on those resources, it'll be an easier challenge to overcome. In the higher level organizations, there are very, very few, and because again, you can probably have these different levels of maturity in every organization, and very few enterprises, can probably rate themselves at level 4 throughout their entire organizations. So, to bring it back from a demand management life cycle, you're gonna have strategic and operational projects that are gonna go through your ideation and request. They're gonna receive go no go, in which case, after which case you have a business created. Really, the issue here is that there needs to be a connection with the entire resource management process, and that's what we show on the bottom on green, where you're going at every step, and at the same time that you're developing those business cases, you have an understanding of that entire resource pool. And when you're ready to actually make decisions and commit resources, you have, again, understanding of what the constraints are for all of the resources and different folks that are available to work on projects. So we're going to jump real quick into a demonstration, but in the end, what you need to have is resource capacity planning organization-wide. So you're going to develop the different project sources from strategy and operations, and you need to have the ability to see where everyone is allocated across all projects. And that means that the capacity for all your resources needs to be defined and needs to be summarized as they are allocated and committed to projects. In the end, also, the summary of all that data in actionable reporting is really the value of the solutions. So I'll give you a quick feature flash of what is available through OnePlan in the context of resource capacity planning and reporting, so you can see the value of having that within your organization for this process. So I'm going to quickly hand off to Amber, who's going to give us a couple more points on strategy.
Thank you, Jose. What I'll do is bring us back a bit to what I would say is strategy realization and strategic planning processes. And fundamentally, you can find that many organizations have different things, different views, and are different ways of doing strategic planning or lack thereof. And I think the component we want to talk about today, as I am choppy with my view of my screen, there is a missing process I often find organizations when it comes to strategy realization, and we refer to it at Accelare as S2E, so strategy execution. It's a pretty simple process. It's really about gaining leadership alignment to outcomes and strategy that allows you to move forward. That yellow part up there, it's just a framework that each organization can adapt. And
sorry,
with that,
we can't see the screen, sorry.
Oh, you can't? My bad. Thank you, Jose.
Thank you.
Can you see it now?
Yes, we are. It's good. Thank you.
There you go. Thank you. Too many options on GoToWebinar. So let me take a step back. So the S2E, Strategy Execution Framework, oftentimes this is a process or framework with processes in it that doesn't either exist in an organization or is very ad hoc. It's not consistent. And fundamentally, it can be adapted. And as you've lived in many organizations, you might have seen how it varies along the way based on what level you're at and how strategic plans are built and operational planning is done. Now, S2E is a framework with processes. It gives you a way to align leadership, outcomes, and strategy, and allows you in that yellow part to connect to those resource capacity processes, that management and availability, and planning processes. So it allows a view into that, but also alignment back to make better decisions along the way as you build out and deliver execution work. It translates those strategies into what we call an operating model or capability model. The term itself is irrelevant. What matters is it's in a context that others can understand and you can plan to and make decisions from. Also, too, we find that organizations in that yellow part don't have a clear view of their strategy. They have one, but they don't have a clear view that everyone can understand. And so what S2E or strategy execution gives you is a way to do or realize your strategy in a way that, let's just say, can be complex, but we've made it simple enough, but there still are no shortcuts. I'll say this a few times as I go through some of the demo, but on the bottom part down here, we've highlighted Jose was just talking about this, that the focus on resource capacity is very key in the bottom right, But the prioritization of what you work on and what those resources should work on is often not consistent. It's backdoor conversations, leadership making choices, and frankly, just lack of communication about it and consistent understanding of what the strategy is. And so confirming and validating up above, is what we'll call it, with S2E around your operating model, we look at capabilities to help confirm and validate the project and execution work and resources are working on the right things to execute your strategy. And so that process itself within that framework allows you to do this, as we were mentioning earlier, on a consistent basis, but also whenever you need to. It's not as though you have to wait for the once-a-year strategic planning process your organization might have. And so that common approach helps you move down that path to realize your strategy and understand if you're achieving it as work is executing. So think of it this way. So if you have a process or you need one, there's some attributes to look for when you consider a process like this. Number one, you want the ability to do course correction as strategy delivery is underway. So if you start working through a project, uncover some things and decide, you know what, that's not what we want to do, you need to be able to course correct quickly. That process also needs to address value of what I would say more clear and frequent project updates so that you can help make sound decisions as a leader or as a PMO strategic resource. That process also sets steps to allow for what I would call the benefits of rebalancing as needed. So rebalancing the portfolio, resource capacity as an example. Also, it should look for having the ability to improve project velocity or speed of delivery without sacrificing quality, meaning business outcomes and what's expected to be achieved to deliver strategy. And one last point, it needs the ability to optimize over-allocated resources capacity. We often find that there's the usual suspects, is a term I use, the go-to people to deliver, and those resources, as they are so precious in your organization, oftentimes need the help at a top-down to understand as well when they make decisions how much that strips them of their ability to deliver on the work they're already accountable to or assigned to deliver. And so with that, I want to jump us over, and I believe, Jose, you're going to hand off here and show us OnePlan right now, correct?
Thank you, Amber. Yes, I'm going to do that. So everyone should be seeing my screen where I'm showing OnePlan. So for those that haven't been introduced, this is OnePlan, the OnePlan solution, which is a project and portfolio management, modern project and portfolio management solution that allows you to plan portfolios and projects with resources and financials, detailed resource and financial plans attached to them, as well as your demand management. It's unique because it incorporates a lot of best-of-breed capabilities. For instance, you see at the top that we have not only the ability to have lists and views, but also boards and roadmaps and dashboards, which are very common now in project portfolio management solutions. At the same time, it incorporates an entire resource pool, so we can actually see resource plans for projects that have been created and where our over allocations exist and where the projects that created those over allocations. Modern in the sense that, you know, we can move allocations if needed in order to resolve them, or, you know, insert in this case hours, committed hours for projects if needed. It has a scheduler for us to be able to, you know, drag and drop resource allocation. So, for instance, this Eric Bachman here, you know, if I needed to actually move this PipeNet project that can go through and move it and benefit from using OnePlan. Going back to our portfolio view, I can include a Gantt in order to see, in this case, my strategic and operational portfolios and which projects are actually off track or an exception. And we see here this digital sales model is actually not doing well. If we want it to actually go into its details, we can see where it's at. So this is something that is active. It should be planned, but it is red, and it has to do with resources, which we'll get to in a second, because we can go to the resource plan and see who's been assigned. And in this case, we only have a business analyst assigned. We have it within our business plan. We had 2 FTEs, so we could come in here and add additional resources or look for additional resources. This is a project that actually was running through November, and we needed 2 FTEs, so we can go through and add additional folks. Manager, and we can add an additional project manager. Now it's red, so we're trying to fix the resource over allocation so I can come through and make that assignment. And here I'm doing it on a generic basis. So if I wanted to plan financials, I can, and I haven't because we just have our budget amount, but you can actually break this down further into its cost categories and cost types. Getting back to the portfolio real quick, if I remove again, I see my different portfolios, and you can see that I have 3 strategy portfolios and 2 operational portfolios with all of the indicators. If I wanted to actually get to my prioritization, I can go from here into a prioritization view and then see how we have actually prioritized the projects. These that are still in proposal, if I wanted to actually go through and move them, re-rank them based on the prioritization score that I have here, I can do that. So, these higher ones that should be in between with a 44 for our standardized fee schedules by provider type. I have done that. I have an FTE estimate. Let's get back to our digital sales model project, because it's overall health is off track and it's ever health is off track. So I put 2 generics on there, but really what I want to find out is, what is the source of that project? Where did it actually come from? Before I do that, I'm going to go to roadmap real quick just to see in terms of my portfolios. So it actually belongs within Grow the Business. It is in red. It actually has the longest duration. So I really want to find out exactly where, what is the genesis of that? Why is this project so important? It's the highest rated project that we have within our Grow the Business. So in that sense, I really want to understand how it ties to our value streams, to the OKRs of the organization. So that's where I'm going to want to look at how this project got created, what's the genesis of it. And at that point, I will want to go to Workfit, where all of that information in terms of how it was generated actually comes in. So what I'd like to do now is hand it to Amber for her to give us that perspective.
Thank you, Jose. I will go ahead and bring us over to Workfit. Can you confirm that you can see my screen?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Jose, since I seem to have operator error today. So in Workfit, as we are looking at the digital sales project that's underway in red, I'm going to lead us into how do we take Workfit then and see how it can help us understand, number one, what strategy is this aligned to and why it's so important for the organization. and then understand what outcomes are trying to be achieved. And so we were working in a certain portfolio before in Workfit, OnePlan, and that portfolio was the grow the business. The digital sales project was in that portfolio and already underway. So I can enter through one way is in Workfit to go by the project within the portfolio, which was the digital sales model here. And so I can easily go in through the portfolio or even at the project level, knowing that I'm looking into why is this one so high a priority on the list, especially since it's red and behind. So within the Workfit tool, this project gives us a view into what happened during strategic planning. To number one, define that the project needed to happen, but also what was about it that aligned back to our strategy. The project right now, as you can see, it has the same type of information you might find in OnePlan, and also reflecting the status of what OnePlan is saying, which is it's, from this perspective, red. It's not achieving the outcome at this point, and the status is red. Within Workfit, we have a component called S2 Actions. Within those components there, you can see it's our first way of linking back up to strategy. And so what we find right here is, you'll see it says 1.6, identify customer needs and concerns, and 2.4, advertise and market brand products. What I mentioned earlier was the concept of an operating model with capabilities. This gives us a way to understand what parts of the organization this project is impacting. And that linkage right there helps us understand what will connect us back to strategy. Right now, it also could help us understand if there's any other projects from the strategic planning perspective it was dependent on. For this one, there's none. It's so new for the organization. But within that context, I can actually take a look at what about this capability is so important. You also notice it says red on there. You'll see that red box. So I'm going to click on the capability. It'll take me up a level again. And what this capability is to advertise, market, brand, and products. And you can see it's in kind of a transformative state, meaning that during strategic planning, leadership had prioritized this as a key capability to transforming the organization to meet the new strategy demand. And right now, the heat is a red, which is why you saw red on the prior level, describing that they're either inefficient, ineffective, or frankly don't have the capability today as an organization. And what I'm going to do is show you too that the leadership role team had decided that there was some opportunity here around advertising, market, brand, and products. And they had initiated at another level to say, you know what, we need to go digital with our sales model. How do we do that? Should we do that? And so that executive actually rolling us up another level, defined the need to do some research, put a quick little team together, not a project. Just try to understand what is the opportunity here to address either a missing capability or to fix a broken one. And so what we show here is the S2 action that gives us the process. So number one, it's in process, but it links us right back to that project down here, which was already approved, already in execution underway. But what I can see right now is that it impacted this capability. And if I look down here, I can see that it's aligned directly to the strategic purpose of grow commercial membership for small group market. Now, this is a healthcare payer. So trying to grow the business, which is why I was in that portfolio. But fundamentally, this is an objective that the organization wants to achieve. And so I went from the portfolio with the project to the capability to the initiating step of saying, what do we want to do? And that links us right to the strategy. I'm going to click on this here. And that takes us up to a concept Jose mentioned earlier, OKR, objectives and key results. Slightly different than a KPI, a construct that you can see here gives you the objective at top and then allows you to put in key results to help measure along the way. So it's taking a project and allowing us to see exactly what it's expecting to help contribute to a strategic outcome. And you'll also see too here that there's other capabilities that this objective the organization is trying to achieve may impact them. And you'll see also that some of these are red and some are green. But ideally, we'll see other opportunities here under S3 actions where anyone in the organization, especially in a leadership role with strategic planning, might have submitted some projects or ideas or ways operationally that are just process-based work to address some of these red capabilities that don't necessarily get fed into a project, but may result in one downstream with a business case. And so we can actually have an insight into what else or proposed ideas are related to achieving, number one, this objective, number two, contributing to these results, and number three, what capabilities across the organization those relate to. So that's our walk back up to how we get to strategy from a project and understanding why it's so important, because as you could see, it's transformative and needs improvement given all the issues the organization has around delivering on these key capabilities here. And so one more thing I'd like to show you that gives you some context when I talked about operating model with capabilities. I want to close out a little bit, but I'm going to kick over here to capability. There's another view that allows you to see all those capabilities that are listed in another context that you can actually connect projects to, as well as submit ideas in that initial ideation phase. What I was looking at earlier is this healthcare payers core model, but model that means this is the core of their business. They build and deliver health plans, health insurance plans. And so what this view gives you right here, I know it's a little hard to see possibly with my screen. What you'll see is actually the first two chevrons here, develop products and services and acquire and manage customers, is where most of those capabilities were, that OKR, that key objective and key results, we're looking to improve and transform. And the project, the digital sales model project, was actually impacting this advertise and market brand products and identify customer needs and concerns. So it's great as we can connect it back there as well. So there's a variety of levels you can connect to. But what's key is that we actually, between OnePlan and Workfit, fundamentally share the project information once it's approved, and then fundamentally the status and resource needs, so you can actually have a full view of what's going on as you're doing your strategic planning processes. I think that's about it for me on my side, Jose. I want to kind of throw over to you too and see if there's anything else you'd like to cover with OnePlan or even Workfit, actually.
No, I think we are good. We're ready to talk about benefits and key takeaways.
And I am pulling it up shortly.
No problem.
Alrighty, I think I got it up now finally. A little slow today. Sorry about that.
Yes.
Okay, so fundamentally then, we walk back to how we started the dialogue around just-in-time resource planning for strategy realization, having that connection back and an approach with the tools to support it really allows you that transparency to make real-time, quick decisions and course corrections. So you can quickly track back to where the strategy is impacted and what to do about it, who to contact, number one. But it also helps with strategic priorities within resource capacity. So when you're in execution and managing that portfolio, you can easily check back to see what the higher level strengths are, what the gaps are, and help drive some of that, not only just decisioning, but the information you share to help decision makers understand what resource capacity needs really need to be realigned to. It also allows you to check back on business outcomes at any time and understand too if there's other things going on in the organization that may not be project-based that are impacting closing those capability gaps and help you understand if your project has closely achieved what's needed, but also who to work with in the organization, those communication channels, to understand what the outcome of other work is as well. And then fourth, really, the monitoring of strategy realization. Workfit gives you insights into that, while also connecting back to OnePlan to understand what's executing. So as soon as stuff is closing out within what we monitor within OnePlan, Workfit status is also updated so leadership can see as you're achieving and closing those gaps through project-based work. But what's key about all of it, though, is the tool piece, right? We talked earlier about a lot of strategy processes have PowerPoint, Excel. There's constructs in various organizations and how you visualize that strategy. Workfit has other ways to do it as well. Today we just showed you the capability piece, so more than welcome to contact us for further demos. But I want to stress that that integrated solution really will help with strategy realization, and projects really fundamentally exist to deliver strategy. And that's a key component I think a lot of us overlook. And then what we want to take away today, what do you want to take away today? You know, between Jose and I think we really wanted to stress there are things you can start doing as you walk away from our webinar today. And hopefully we hear from you again. We'd love to show you some more demos. You know, part of it comes back to you want to get the most out of your resources today, and that requires an strategy execution planning approach and process and the supporting tools. So first step is to start doing stuff. Don't waste time. Don't define a perfect process. Start taking that execution work and mapping it back to capabilities and operating model and that value stream. Plenty out there. They're not complex. Don't overcomplicate it. But also discover and understand what we call OKRs, so objectives and key results, and understand where those map to on your value stream. That right there will give you a great pick story about what actually are the outcomes each of those pieces of value stream are looking to achieve, or many of them are. And then build your story of what the impact of what your current resources and execution are being used against what that strategy is saying and where those are allocated. And that's just a piece of that story that will help leadership and help you with prioritization of execution resources. We also stress too to move away from the manual tools. It's just the burden of maintenance, the maintenance nightmare of it, the complexity of trying to create concepts and connecting them, you know, between OnePlan and Workfit. It's a solid connection and gives you all those models and tools to understand your resource capacity needs, and also give you and your leadership transparency. And so that's what we'd like to leave you with today. And thank you all. I'm going to hand over to Jose really quick too for a final closeout.
Thank you, Amber. We want to thank all of you for your time today in listening to our best practice guidance on strategy execution and resource management. And if you're interested in this topic and improving it within your organization, defining better projects to improve your capabilities, and then having the right resource management process in place to deliver more, then please give us a call. Between both organizations, we have many years and many consultants that have done this in hundreds of customers. So it's very dear to our heart. In terms of Workfit and OnePlan, they're both SaaS solutions, and by now to customers that are serious in evaluating it, we offer free trials. So please make contact if you're interested in either one of them, and we can walk you through the benefits of using Workfit and OnePlan. I leave my information there in terms of how to make contact. And finally, we want to thank you. Both Amber and I enjoyed being on the presentation and sharing with you. So thanks a lot, and look forward to hearing from you and seeing you in our next webinar. Thanks a lot.